the Gospel of Philip. Now, in the New Testament, or in the New Testament times, I should say, there were many writings that didn't make the canon of the New Testament. Mystical writings mostly, because the bishops didn't go for this mysticism stuff. They were intellectuals. And so many things like the Gospel of Mary, the Gospel of Thomas, the Gospel of Philip, many others written legitimately was bypassed, put aside, buried, so to speak. And so when you go and find them and read them, you will find they're different between that and the New Testament, in that after the New Testament was chosen, a monk sat down and broke the book into chapters and then verses so that their students could relate and work with it. Of course, these that were not put in the New Testament were not broken down like that. And so you'll see the Gospel of Mary, the Gospel of Philip, and so on. They have sort of like separations in like a paragraph, a double space or something that will decide, that will show you this is a different teaching. So I would like to take two references from the Gospel of Philip and discuss it for just a moment in relationship to our discussion, our dictation today. First of all, he said, it is not possible for anyone to see anything of the things that actually exist unless he becomes like them. This is not the way with man in the world. He sees the sun without being a son. And he sees heaven and the earth and all other things. But he is not these things. This is quite in keeping with the truth. But you saw something of that place, and you became those things. You saw the Spirit. You became Spirit. You saw Christ. You became Christ. You saw the Father. You shall become Father. So in this place, which I think is heaven in this reference, so in this place, you see everything and you do not see yourself. But in that place, which is the earth, you do see yourself. And what you see, you shall become. This can be a tremendous revelation to some people. Let's break it down. It is not possible for anyone to see anything of the things that actually exist unless he becomes like them. What is he saying? Well, if you understand, first of all, that the basic common denominator of the whole universe is energy. God is energy. You are energy. Everything is energy. And what you experience is dependent upon your level of energy. You take musicians. If you sing a note but you're underneath where you should be on that vibration. They say you're flat. If in your singing, you're above that specific area, they say you're sharp. Need to tone it down a little bit, bring it up a little bit to make the perfect vibration. And then you can see it. You can work with it. It sounds great. Or you take the movie industry. If the picture, the vibration that's causing the picture, if it's a little bit flat, the picture, we say it's out of focus, doesn't look good. Or if it's sharp, it's the same. Everything has to be right on to manifest the same. So it is with spirit. Spirit is energy. And when we understand this, we begin to understand what we mean by tuning, so that we can move up into that high spirit. Because the difference between an angel and an entity is in frequency. That's how you know whether there's entities around you or not. You begin to read frequency. When you meet people, you read frequency. You understand when you want to not open up to people, or whether you see, oh man, we are one the moment you meet. And so as you begin to understand this aspect, you understand what he's talking about. You must be on the same level of frequency if you're going to communicate and experience spirit. Again, in the Gospel of Philip, he said, Jesus took them all by stealth, for he did not appear as he was, but in the manner in which they would be able to see him. He appeared to them all. He appeared to the great as great. He appeared to the small as small. He appeared to the angels and an angel. And he appeared to man as a man. Because of this, his word hid itself from everyone. Some indeed saw him, thinking that they were seeing themselves. But when he appeared to his disciples in glory on the mount, he was not small. He became great. And but he made all his disciples great, that they might be able to see him in his greatness. That ends that quote. But I want to add, and they responded to that greatness. If you remember, after Moses and Elijah disappeared and they saw Jesus again, they said, Master, wow, we need to build 3 chapels here. We need to put a memorial somehow here, because this was great. Their whole lives were changed. So if your vibration, your attitude, your intention, your feeling is in sync with the vibration or tune that you desire to experience, then you might be successful. How many months I prayed. After I got out of seminary, I still couldn't see angels, couldn't talk to angels. I felt like there was something basically missing in my education, because I believed in angels from the time I was a child. We were trained well. At Christmas, we would sit down and the family would hear the Christmas story, how the angels came. So many times one would wonder if there are angels. And so eventually, after I came out of seminary, I was on a team and we were traveling, doing programs in the evening. I have been praying for 6 months. If you want me to talk about you, beloved angels, you must show yourself for me. I want to know that you are real. And so it was in the fall. We were in southern Illinois. We had a day off. And so we chose to go out to a state park. And each of us took a different path. And there I was walking up this path. My spirit was high because the beauty, the joy all around me, the quietness. It was so quiet. It was cold, and so nobody else was there. But oh my goodness, what beauty and the joy. And suddenly there she was, right 20 feet ahead of me, or 20 yards, whatever. But there she was in all the beauty. I was ecstatic. Since that time, I've had many experiences with them, but you had to be on that high vibration. You got to be away from your intellect. Go by your feelings, and the feelings has to be way up there. So back to Philip. This is not the way with man in the world. He sees the Son without being the Son. He sees the heaven and earth and all other things, but he is not those things. This is quite in keeping with truth. So I don't believe the intellectual would say, I don't believe anything, because unless I can feel it, sense it, see it in my eyes, feel it, that's the only way I will believe in it. He walks in a vacuum. There's the atheist. There is no God. There is no such thing. But all you do is look at his car and you see him worshiping that car. You don't dare scratch it. You don't dare move with it. It's got to be just perfect for him. And his mind is constantly on that. That's his God. People have either a divine God or a human God. Again, back. But you saw something in that place, and you became those things. You saw the Spirit. You became the Spirit. How do we get the Declaration of Independence? Basically because the creators of it got to the point of signing their signatures, which they knew if they didn't make it, they would be shot because of it. And so they were hesitating. They were hesitating, knowing that this could be life or death. And somebody stood up in the balcony and shouted, "Sign that paper." Who was that but Saint Germain, working with the power of the Holy Spirit? As you begin to see the Spirit, you begin to work with the Spirit. You become the Spirit. We say, look at Lanello when he was Mark. Riots were going on down in Los Angeles. terrible riots. It's my understanding he flew there, and with the angels with him, walked up and down the streets. Peace came. It was all done. When the Supreme Court made its declaration, and you had eruptions all over the place, people were screaming and so on. That's when you and I should have said, angels, come. You remember what Jesus said when in the garden, when Peter cut off the servant's ear, Jesus said, put the sword away. If I need protection, I have many legions of angels at my disposal. So, did anybody think about taking the legions of angels that you can now have and walk through the crowds, bringing peace, joy, so on? They were saying that it was going to be a night of vengeance. It was complete failure on their part. Why? Because enough people walked with God and moved in through and neutralized the situation. Take World War II. On the beach, on the beach of Normandy, the Allies were ready to go onto the beach. The Germans were all set to just kill them off right and left, when suddenly on the hill, away from the beach, the Germans suddenly turned and started putting all of their ammo on that hill. And you say, why? They asked people afterwards, why did they do that instead of putting it on the beach where the men were coming in? They said, because the Germans suddenly saw many, 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 many angels on horseback. They didn't recognize them as angels. It was just an army on horseback. And they decided to go there. And while the men came on to the shore. When we begin to understand what we have at our disposal, we never think in terms of, I can do this. I can do this. But the gospel says, you see the Spirit, you become Spirit. You see Christ, you become Christ. You don't say, oh, eventually I will become Christ. You say that about the Father. But when you accept, I am one with Saint Germain, Saint Germain expects you to be him in these key spots around the world. And it's so important for us to see that there's no time in between. There was a big test. They took a basketball team with all the people on the team pretty much equal. They cut the team in half. Half the team practiced every day on the floor, shooting and so on. The other half spent the same amount of time sitting in meditation, visualizing them in this game, working constantly. Afterwards, they tested them, and they found that the people who were in meditation gained almost the same as the people who did the practicing physical, which says you don't have to go through all this stuff in training, but you can sit down in meditation and become that person. If you see the Christ, you become the Christ. It isn't a matter of saying, eventually I will become the Christ. No, no. You see, you become. And this is what what Saint Germain says in this dictation. You see me, you will become me. It's a matter of saying, let's get past this point of maybe I will. No, 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 no. You see Jesus, you become Jesus. And what do they say? And what does Paul say in Ephesians? The gifts of the Spirit are joy, peace, happiness, and so on. We become. It's a matter of saying, okay, what I see, I can become. But how many times do we see? How many times do we think in terms of, I am no longer Carl. I am now Saint Germain. I am now Lanello. When I first came into the teachings, Mother had Nancy and I come in and sit down in her office. And she said to me, you must read everything Lanello has written. You must hear everything he has spoken. You must begin to think like Lanello. That was the assignment. You have the same assignment. When you see the Christ, you are the Christ. You're no longer you. And then the very last of that quote, the first quote I had, he says, when you see the world situation, you see it from the Father's point of view, not from the point of view of the participant. And thus, if you see yourself in spirit, you do not see yourself, because you see everything from Father or Son's point of reference. But if you're in the world, everything you create, you are the creator. Your ego is there saying, see what I have done. This is mine. Not in the spirit. You become one with the Father. You manifest the Father. You manifest the Son. You manifest the Mother. You are that. Not something you're going to gain, but something you are at the very moment.